know. Thumbs up, clap, heart. Just let us know what you're feeling. And then if you have any questions or you want to make any comments, please use the chat function. And if you want to, you can chat with other people on the chat. Tell us where you're from. It's always interesting. So, and I don't see any chats yet. There we go. Thank you. Springs is the first one and a gloomy Pretoria. Thank you so much. So thank you for joining us today from all of the countries around the world. We operate in 167 countries now. So we have a global footprint and our conversations are always global in nature. We have also opened the questions and answers function, the Q&A function. So if you do have a question for Prof King, please put it in the Q&A so we don't lose it in the chatter in the chat. But today I'm going to start. First of all, today we're talking about chairing a board, an organization for long-term value creation and sustainability. And there's no one better than Prof King, our founder and patron of the Good Governance Academy, to provide us with some insights. But perhaps we can start not with an existing board and turning around an existing board, because we've already spoken about strategy. We thought it would be quite different to start now. How do you approach a new board and swing a new board towards value creation? So with that brief introduction, Prof King, over to you for your insights. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Carolyn, and I'm delighted to once again join one of these at the Helm conversations by GGA. And as you say, we are all around the world, and we have some 4.5 million people following us around the world in 167 countries. So let me assume, in order to start this conversation, that I'm asked to become the chair of a company, and the idea is to make sure the company has long-term success. Well, the first thing I would do is have a look at the business model and see whether it has been developed on the basis of looking at it through the three pillars of sustainable development: the economy, society, and the environment. If not, that needs to be addressed. And then, what is the long-term goal of the company? It's interesting, I had a fireside chat with the chairman of Shell. I think it was a GGA event, Carolyn, if I remember correctly. And he pointed out that people say turn off the taps and stop the oil and stop the traffic in London and New York, etc. And that Shell is perhaps the share most held by pensioners in pensions in the EU, and that the dividends, they've had consistent dividends for decades. Also, some pension funds have got so big that they have underwritten IPOs of companies listed on the London Stock Exchange. So if one turned off the taps today of the Shell Oil Company, the dividends would stop to these pension funds. The pensioners wouldn't get their pensions, for example. And it just indicates how to have this transition to move away from fossil fuels is a question of planning and realigning your long-term goal. And the long-term goal of Shell is to be the most sustainable energy provider in the world. Sustainable energy provider in the world. So it's a change in what the goal of the company is, but it is a share that is held by these pension funds, of course, by other entities, but by many pension funds around the world. And you can see why transition is something that has to be managed and planned. And as the new chair, I would apply my mind to that and ask the members of the board as to what they're doing to achieve this sustainable long-term goal. And have they been applying thinking on an integrated basis, or have they still been thinking in silos? And a good indication would be if they are doing an integrated report, because an integrated report drives one to think on an integrated basis. And research has shown when that is done, you actually have more effective governance, your bottom line improves, and it is only beneficial. And what is interesting, as you all know probably online, that the IFRS has now got ownership of the IR framework, that the number of companies around the world that are doing integrated reports has increased since the IFRS acquired that intellectual property by some 20% from the date of acquisition. That is quite amazing when you think about it, because there's been no promotion done on it. Of course, the IFRS is very busy with the ISSB standards now, the sustainability standards. So I would also want to know whether, from a governance point of view, the company has actually achieved the 4 critical outcomes of value creation, but in a sustainable manner. Are there adequate and effective controls? I spoke about combined assurance many years ago. People today are talking about, the accounting profession is talking about integrated assurance. So you actually have a very informed internal audit, and a lot of companies today are using hybrid internal auditors, and that is taking one of the big 6 to be an internal auditor together with your internal audit executive, head of internal audit. They work together, but they do a lot of the work that would have been done by the external auditor. And the external auditor starts accepting the assurances given by the internal auditor, which is one of the big 6. And so you can actually start reducing also the cost of audit, and the quality of your audit improves. The other reason for having one of the big 6 in your hybrid internal audit is the uncertainties being created by generative AI and the whole technological development. Also the 99% of companies cannot afford to keep up with the technological development in a machine sense. And but the big 6 have it because of their balance sheets. And so when you have this hybrid internal audit model, it actually helps. So then, has the company had effective leadership? Effective in a sense that they've accepted that the directors are the guardians of the company's assets and its business affairs. And as guardians, they need to treat it with great care. And of course, they need to report anything which is material. And materiality in that legal sense is defined as any information which, as a matter of probability, could influence the mind of the user as to whether continue granting credit to the company or not, for example. And so I would investigate whether that has happened, and then find out really in the community in which the company is operating, what is the trust and confidence level in that company as a good corporate citizen? It's important to find that out. So also, has the board identified the geopolitical tensions which would be affecting and impacting on the company and impacting on strategic decisions being taken from time to time? What are the skill shortages that are needed in the business? Has the board applied its mind to that? Because you've got to have the right skills in order to achieve that long-term goal. And there are nature and biodiversity losses around the world. What are the natural assets which the company is using in producing its product? And how do they try and conserve that natural asset? So then there are weather events. Now, whether the Trump administration likes it or not, it's a fact that business is at the junction of the economy, society, and the environment. And that will never change. And we did go through at least a century of where there was primacy given to one stakeholder, namely the shareholder. But the increase in profits, which Professor Friedman said was the sole purpose of the limited liability company, was actually subsidized by society and the environment during the 20th century, hence the degradation of planet Earth and the endeavors now to try and heal that and conserve it. So, Carolyn, I would ask the board and address all these matters and, if necessary, go offline and have a meeting with the board members to make sure we also are on the same page when thinking about things. Not that we all of a like mind, because we need really, if necessary, heated discussion about certain issues. But when the collective mind of the board is applied to making business judgment calls, that we're singing from the same hymn sheet. It's absolutely important. So I would talk about that. And having got all that together, you can start cheering for achieving the long-term goal. And that would be a bit of a mouthful for the board to start swallowing and to get all that correct. And that could take maybe a year or two, maybe even, to get it right. But always with your eye on that long-term goal. So from time to time, you're going to make strategic short-term decisions. And but the long-term goal must never be forgotten, that you want to achieve, for example, Shell, the most sustainable energy supply in the world. So a long answer to your question, Carolyn.
No, it's brilliant. Let me just take, I've got lots of questions, but the question from Kerry is, thank you for leading this conversation. Is the foundation of the formation of the company the board and the chair or the CEO? If it is he or she, is it if it's is he or she is not the chair? So let's just try that again. Is the foundation of the formation of the company the board and chair or the CEO? And the CEO, if they're not the chair, obviously, if they're separate roles.
The answer is neither, because the chair is there to lead the board, and the chair should actually be appointed from the directors themselves. And one of the weaknesses in state-owned entities, especially when an entity is formed not in terms of the Companies Act, but by statute becomes a legal persona, is that they also provide that the shareholder appoints the chairman and the chief executive. Well, when something goes wrong, the company will sue the directors, and they won't sue the shareholder who nominated. So the chair is the leader of the board. The CEO is the leader of the management team implementing the decisions of the board, and the board has oversight over that, over the executive. But it's an interesting question because people think of ownership that shareholders are the owners of the company, which they are not. A shareholder can't remove, as I've said in many meetings, you can't even remove a pencil from the company. It's a theft because it's the company's asset. So neither the chair nor the chief executive is the foundation of the company, but of course critical facets of the company, because the chair leads the board in making business judgment calls in the long-term best interest of the health of the company and with a view to achieving that long-term goal in a sustainable manner. And the CEO leads the management team that's implementing it. So I always say boards think and management does. And that's what it is. And the other thing interesting in that question is that the board is an oversight body and an approval body. It approves the management, it improves the financial statements drawn by management. It approves sustainability reports, which will be mandatory in the next 2 years, I believe. Who will draw those? The chief sustainability officer with their team, maybe. Who will approve it? The board. So the board is an approval body, and it's that collective mind when they all come together as one mind, the board, to approve. And that's the other importance of an integrated report, because it's the one time that the board actually speaks. It reports to the company to which the directors owe their duty, and through the company to all the stakeholders. The voice of the company is the board, and the board actually speaks to the company and through the company to all the stakeholders with an integrated report. It's not something prepared by management and approved by the board. The board actually prepares it and sends it out in a concise, clear, and understandable manner. And those were my critical words in the final drafting of the IR framework: clear, concise, and understandable. And why is that so important? Because in the 90%, shareholders, the man walking the street might be a shareholder, or a small entity might be a shareholder, a small pension fund, for example. They do not necessarily understand the specificity and the detail of financial statements and what the consequences are, what conclusions you draw from that. They do not necessarily understand all the intricacies of sustainability reports. And like financial reporting, unfortunately, mea culpa, because I've been involved in it since the beginning of this 21st century, we developed a language of our own, like ecological overshoot and things like that. We talk about these things as if everybody understands it, but of course people don't. And you need that clear, concise, and understandable communication by the board, which is the voice of the company. The board is the ultimate authority of the company, and that's the governance architecture of companies from inception in the 19th century.
Thank you. So I'm just the 2 points that I actually put in the chat is the boards think and management does. And the board is an approval body, but it's not a rubber stamping body. No. It applies its mind, deliberates, and then approves, right?
It's got to do so with what I call original intellectual thinking.
Okay.
It's got to be original. It mustn't be, people think when I talk about singing from the same hymn sheet, well, everybody's got the same mindset. Not at all. But you've got to have agree what your key performance indicators are, your key risk indicators are, because you're going to make business judgment calls, and those issues are critical. And the board's got to know what they agree that they are, and they will be impacted on when you make that business judgment call. The other interesting thing, of course, is that when something does go wrong from a business judgment call, shareholders and other entities don't have a right to sue the directors, because the directors don't owe them a duty of care. The directors do not owe shareholders a duty of care. They do not owe the banks who lend money a duty of care. They owe it to the company. So if the company is running into trouble and the bank doesn't get paid, and they believe the directors have gone down the wrong path and caused harm to the company, and therefore it's run out of cash flow and can't pay its debts on due date, well, they say the company's been harmed by the directors, and they can't sue the directors directly. Of course, the directors owe their duty to handle these things properly to the company. And the banks have got to ask through the company to sue derivatively, to sue the directors. And to sue derivatively is problematic because you can spend millions of rands on legal fees and you are successful. And it doesn't mean to say you're going to be paid because creditors generally have to be paid first. And if you are a shareholder suing derivatively, you're at the back of the queue in
So if
the
you paid
ranking.
all of this money to sue the
You
directors and
paid
you're
all
the
the
last
money
one.
and you've got a judgment in your favor, but the money goes to the company. It doesn't go to the plaintiff who sues derivatively. The money goes to the company, and the company's got to first pay all the creditors 100%. And if there's anything left over, then it starts going to. But there's a whole ranking of the creditors, like secured creditors, preference creditors, etc., etc. So a lot of thinking goes into these foundational aspects, which the first question I asked.
Yes, absolutely. And so if we have the foundation now and you're trying to swing, oh wait, there's a question here about integrated reporting. While we mention integrated reporting, this is from Rob Newsom. Rob's, I think, with PKF now. Do you believe IFRS has improved financial reporting and understanding of business? Are better investment decisions being made? Is better accountability being achieved? So those are all questions of impact. Your original intention for integrated reporting is to have an impact on corporate transparency and corporate accountability and corporate reporting. Has that impact actually materialized?
And to make it understandable to all stakeholders generally. And the answer to Rob is that research has been done, and all I can tell you that companies that have followed integrated reporting and think on an integrated basis, integrated thinking, their performance from a bottom line point of view has absolutely improved. Their reputations have improved. The trust and confidence in that company by the community in which they operate has improved. And so generally it's when it's agreed to do an integrated report, and I was speaking to the IFRS recently, and they've been monitoring it because they're now the owners of the framework. And there's been a 20% increase globally in integrated reporting, even though there's been no promotion of it, because as you all know, the IFRS is very busy with the ISSB standards. And well, the ISSB is a separate board, but as a subsidiary of the IFRS. And also very busy working with the IASB, its sibling body, about connecting. How do you actually communicate the integration? Because sustainability accounting has become a reality. So your usual accounting terms are there, and your usual items will be there, but there'll be extra provisions maybe because of sustainability issues. So sustainability accounting is a whole new thinking. And at the Wits School of Governance, and I happen to be associated with Wits since 1954, so I don't know where you were in 1954.
I wasn't here.
But I'm housed at the Wits Business School, and Wits honoured me by forming the Wits Mervyn King Centre on Corporate Governance and Sustainability. And the Wits School of Governance, the Wits School of Accountancy, has already developed a module on sustainability accounting. And Carolyn, as you know, we are working on a module for sustainability reporting. And hopefully we will get approval through the Higher Education Department for a postgraduate diploma on sustainability accounting and sustainability reporting. And these things are hugely important when answering the questions in the content elements of the IR. And well, Rob says it's achieved anything beyond the old GOP. I believe it has, because it's made stakeholders that were really not understanding what was happening, really understand what is happening, and given them a voice. And everything around the companies that have adopted integrated thinking. I said when I seem to be talking a lot about myself, I apologize.
No, we want to hear about that.
When I got in June of this year a Lifetime Achievement Award from King Charles's Trust and Deloitte Global and a few other bodies on the future of finance. Um, it was acknowledged that I had started this whole question of integrated thinking, and integrated thinking, that Bastille has been stormed. That the primacy of the shareholder and the thinking that the sole purpose of the board is to increase profits and to, in any manner, to increase the share price and to increase dividends, and that if you achieve those three criteria, it's a successful company. Well, if you, in the meanwhile, have destroyed a natural asset, for example, or whatever you've done in achieving that, or it's been subsidized by society, to my detriment, I think, when I was practicing as a senior counsel, I appeared for directors of a clothing company where they had a clock-in system of the people coming in to sew the clothes. They'd clock in and they would lock the doors to make sure they didn't go out. Now, there was suddenly like an explosion in the ceiling and a fire happened. And this factory was on the second and third floors of a building in Johannesburg, and people jumped out of the windows, and 3 people were killed, died. And some people, 2 died from jumping, and 1 died from the fumes until they got the door open. And the directors were charged criminally with culpable homicide, and I got an acquittal. How did I get an acquittal? It's because cotton, when you're dealing with cotton, its invisible fibers go up, and they go up because they're so light, and they go up and they settle in a ceiling. And I had expert evidence on that. Actually settle in the ceiling. And if you get an extraordinary wind or something, these fibers rub against each other and actually cause a flame. And once you cause a flame, that just spreads through these cotton minuscule fibers. And that's why they heard an explosion, and then they saw fire through the whole ceiling. And the question was, in law, could the directors reasonably have foreseen this would happen? And the judge I appeared before came to the conclusion they couldn't reasonably have foreseen that, because I led a lot of expert evidence on this. And so it's another example of thing you've got to be cautious of in making sure you achieve that long-term success. And it's interesting. So in answer to Rob, again, the story I've just told you is a real-life story. But if people were aware that the company was dealing with just cotton fabric, and experts had read an integrated report which clear, concise, and understandable, but not understanding the financial statements or the sustainability reports, they would have said, are you careful about those cotton fibers in the ceiling?
Exactly. Health and safety.
Or an expert would have seen that. And so generally speaking, integrated thinking has been for the benefit of companies, and not only companies, for other organizations as well. But we're talking here generally, more particularly about limited liability companies. But for organizations generally, they're thinking on an integrated basis. And when I was chairman of the United Nations on governance and oversight and worked with IFAC, the International Federation of Accountants. We came to the agreement that if you landed up with reporting just the financial statement and a sustainability report, and Rob would know this immediately, that's divorced from reality, because you don't have the financial department in Cape Town and the operations, the factory in Johannesburg, and human HR department in Durban or whatever. It doesn't happen. These things are integrated operationally on a 24/7 basis. And as you operate, so you should report. And many great asset owners and asset managers, such as BlackRock, CalPERS said that integrated reports, they read that first, and they get this overview picture of the company financially and sustainably and etc. And then for specificity, they start looking at the sustainability reports and the financial statements. They got this global view, and it's the board who said it to them. The collection of people that are the ultimate responsibility of what's happening in the company.
Certainly, when I'm a judge, I've been for the last 5 years on the tax transparency reporting for the PwC awards. And it's the first thing I go to, of course, is the integrated report, because as you say, it should be the voice of the board. And then it also becomes very clear if the board is actually having having their voice heard, or whether it's just management reporting through the board, through the integrated report. And actually, you mentioned something about the board and shareholders and duty of care to the company. So Christopher's asking, so just to be clear, is the board accountable to shareholders?
No, absolutely not. And thank heavens, this has finally been decided judicially in South Africa with Steinhoff, where some shareholders in the Cape sued the directors, and the directors were moneyed people like Christopher in the Cape in Stellenbosch.
Christo Visa, yeah.
Christo Visa, and there's another director who was a married person, I can't remember. But there were people that you could recover money from. And they sued the directors personally, these shareholders sued the directors personally. And the directors, and I happened to be consulted by an attorney who was acting for one of the directors, and I said, I'll give you my opinion. Tell your client he has nothing to fear but fear itself, because the wrong plaintiff has sued. The plaintiff has got no claim against the directors, and taken exception to the plea take as a fact that they prove everything in their statement of claim. They've got no claim against the directors because there's no duty of care to the shareholders. The duty of care is to the company itself. The incapacitated company that can't think. That's why directors, one of the things I touched on at the beginning, have the directors been acting, have they realized they're the guardians of the company's assets and its business affairs? The same as they'd be the guardian of a young child, and how they would treat that young child. So, yes, so...
So if they've been found wanting in that they haven't acted in the best interest of the company, then they would be liable. Then the money would go to
the company.
To
but
the
then
company.
The banks have got to go to the company and ask the company, can they sue? They want to sue
the company
for
that money.
And how can the company decide to give it a reply to that email demand? They call a board meeting. And most boards are not going to say, yes, we've acted negligently. They're going to say no. That's why the law developed the derivative model, that if the board says no and the company therefore says no, you go to court and the court says, you, Mr. Bank, Discovery Bank, whoever it is, Discovery Bank, you can sue as if you are the company. Discovery Bank pays all the legal fees and everything, and when the money is recovered, the money is the company's money. It's not Discovery Bank's money, because Discovery Bank is just a creditor. So first of all, the creditors got to be paid, and they've got to be ranked, preferential, secured, etc. And then you come to the shareholders, who that's the concomitant. Why have shareholders got no duty or responsibility to a company? They've got none, but the concomitant is that when the company fails or it's run into problems, they are always at the back of the queue. And the claims against the directors, they're not in front. That's the concomitant. They've got no duty or responsibility to the company. So people often say to me, but certainly Sanlam is a major shareholder in the company. The answer is Sanlam doesn't owe a duty to that company. It owes a duty to its shareholders to make
Yes.
the correct appointments on a matter of skill and meritocracy as a director of the company in which they're investing their clients' money.
Resources, yes.
They owe the duty to their shareholders and their clients. So they don't owe the duty to
So
the company in
this
which
is
they invest.
a very important point is that the shareholders are not owners.
They're not.
They're just shareholders. And so Katarib is saying, in my country, in Trinidad and Tobago, directors are accountable by law and can be sued. That is what you're saying. The directors are accountable, but who
Absolutely.
can sue them? Actually, only
The
the company can sue them.
question
Is
is,
that what
who
you're
is
saying?
the correct plaintiff? And
Mm,
the correct plaintiff is the company. It's not
mm,
anybody else, because directors don't owe a duty to anybody else, but they owe it to the company. Now, that's the law, but there comes a time, and this is a very interesting part of corporate law and very delicate part of corporate law, that when the company is running into cash flow problems and is having problems in meeting its commitments on due date, directors' duties actually start leaning towards the creditors. And they've got to be very careful in the decisions they're making, that it's not burdening the company more and causing further harm to the creditors, because then they start opening themselves to liability, maybe to the creditors, because you've got this suddenly switch where you've got to be very careful, and it's a very delicate time as a director.
And that's just recently happened with one of our large construction organizations in South Africa, isn't it? Where there
Roberts.
was that Marion Roberts, very,
Yeah,
very fine balance, as you say.
there's a
There's
very
a
fine balance.
question from Daniel. So this is all to do with the due that you're acting in the due care to the company in the long-term sustainable interests of that company. So this is all related. And this
Well,
is a
it
question.
just shows what the duties of a chair is, to make sure that the directors are acting, this collective mind is acting in the right manner at a particular time.
Mm, mm, mm. There's one here now. This is Daniel was asking in terms of in a government agent. So can directors of a government agency appointed through statute seek legal recourse against the shareholder for unfair treatment? I'm not sure what unfair treatment is, but
But
perhaps
the answer is
influencing.
no,
Mm,
um, unless there was an unlawful conspiracy between the shareholder and the directors. Then you can join them as joint tortfeasors, as they're the wrongdoers. Well, I don't know. I can't think of a case where that's happened, but of course that could happen. You could have in a private, even in a private company with, let's say, 100 shareholders, you could have two shareholders conspiring with the directors in a certain manner, and
mhm,
well, then you can sue them.
mhm. We've got lots of questions. So can I please ask attendees to, if you like a question in the Q&A, just up arrow, up thumb it, and I'll ask those ones first, the ones with most.
Rob has asked, why have the directors of Steinhoff been held liable? Well, they're
Not been held to
not been
account.
held liable. What happened, Rob, is that shareholders actually sued Christa Visa and company directly, and the court correctly held that they owed them no duty of care, and therefore they were not liable to the shareholders. The shareholders didn't have the courage after that to say, well, we'll sue through the company derivatively, because they realized they'd already spent millions of rands on litigation. And the money had to go to the company and pay creditors first. So the answer, Rob, is that Christa Visa could be sued derivatively by the company. But nobody has done that. It's not because I think they've seen the difficulties that major shareholders had in suing the directors. And so you could go derivatively through the company. So Steinhoff as a company has to sue Christa Visa. And it's very interesting that one must remember that Steinhoff was a Netherlands company, and therefore it had a two-tier board, the supervisory board and an executive board. So Jooste chaired the executive board. I think Christo was the chair of the supervisory board, which is really just the non-executive directors. Len Koner was one of the directors, I remember. And the allegations of fraud made against the directors, and the directors sued were mainly the supervisory board directors. Executive board, and I think Jooste was also sued amongst the directors by the shareholders. But the question was, even if you went derivatively through the company, did they actually breach their duty of care in a situation where the information they were being fed was absolutely distorted by management led by Jooste to the board, and they accepted in good faith that information and made business judgment calls from that. So,
lots to prove.
Lots to prove, lots to overcome. And that's why when I was in practice, I never, when somebody came to me for advice to sue directors, I always advised them not to do it.
So Gary Park is asking, is there a difference between the executive board and the supervisory board?
Yes, there is. The executive board deals with what's actually happening operationally. The supervisory board is the one that develops strategy, short-term strategy, looks at the company, as I've suggested, on the long-term goal and achieving the long-term goal, and has oversight over the board, over the executive board, to make sure it's acting correctly. Well, if again the executive board is feeding nonsense to not the correct information to the supervisory board, well, the supervisory board's conclusions it draws become confused.
Correct.
Yeah.
So when you say boards think and management does, in this case, the supervisory board is the thinking body and the management board is the executive board is the do. Okay.
Well, when they sit as directors, they owe a duty to the company. And you've got to think again very carefully. When those executives come together as the executive board, their duties are to the company. But when they go back into their management positions, their duties to the company through a management contract, not the statutory duty of care. It's what the contract says they have to do. They have to tie knots in a certain manner, whatever they have to do. Yeah.
Another question from Camilla on integrated reporting that I'd like to just touch on. How do you see the structure, for example, governance, strategy, risk, and performance of the integrated report evolving in line with the ISSB? What do you envisage being included in the annual report, and what should be supplementary data and reports? And finally, how do we reduce and not increase the burden of reporting? Because that's something on the tax transparency reporting. I'm not only looking at integrated report, tax report, financial statements. I'm looking at about 6 reports now because it's a sustainability report and maybe the taxes to close. So in terms of the integrated report and the integration of sustainability standards now, where is that going? Where do you want it to go?
The answer is that let's say we're in a jurisdiction where the IFRS standards are applicable. So it's IASB financially, it's ISSB sustainability-wise. There's a lot of specificity and a lot of people don't understand financial language, and the conclusions one can draw from a balance sheet or the profit and loss statement. And the same thing with sustainability reporting, something that you're very steeped in, Carolyn. And the average person who reads that doesn't necessarily draw the correct conclusions. And the whole content elements of the IR is for the board, the most informed body of persons about what's happening in the company. It deals with this in a clear, concise, and understandable manner, but now more informed in answering those questions by the sustainability reports, because before they were dealing only with financial reports and were sort of blown around in the wind when it came to sustainability issues, although right from the beginning of this century, sustainability started gathering steam, and we know from research that the market value of companies, only 20% of the value was reflected in the financial statements. And 80% was not even being reported on by directors. So directors were not even discharging their duty of accountability.
Terrible. In fact, there's a point here about Christopher saying, who is responsible if the company becomes insolvent? Management who are directed or overseen by the board, and is the loss then borne by society?
Well, the answer is that the company has a claim against the directors if they have acted negligently or haven't properly applied their mind in making a business judgment call. They haven't considered the 3 pillars of sustainable development, for example, and the company causes harm to the environment, and so environmental laws are transgressed. The company is fined millions of rands or dollars, pounds, whatever it is, and the company runs into financial difficulties. Well, the people responsible for that are the directors are responsible, because the directors should have oversight over what management is doing. And is management liable? Yes. A company can sue management, but through the contract that it has with the company. Now, you've been a director of many companies, Carolyn, and you've got a contract with the company. And that sets out what your duties are in that contract.
Yes.
They're different from what's set out in the Companies Act for a director. They specifically tell you you've got to do this, you've got to do that, you've got to oversee that, you're responsible for this. If you've breached that, the company can sue you for loss.
Yes, because you have a contract with the company.
Right.
Okay, more than just your appointment in terms of law.
The terms of contracts with the company of managers around the world are different. There's not one set of standard contracts. I mean, you're an IT expert, so you had an IT contract involving technology. The person next to you would have is a hydrologist. He would have a contract dealing with the conservation of water, whatever it is.
Yes.
And so the terms of the contract are completely different, and the
Yes.
responsibilities and what you've got to fulfill it. But if you breach that, the company's got a claim against you for damages if it causes harm to the company. But it's a contractual claim. It's not through the statutory duty, even though you, as the head of
Also,
IT, the chief information officer, are also a director of the company. When you
yeah,
walk in that boardroom, you've got your statutory duties of duty of care, skill, and diligence.
and the contractual duties. Yeah.
Well,
Uh,
management.
uh,
You
yeah.
don't have those duties when you're sitting as a director. You now have different duties, and that's why I always talk about caps. Leave your management cap on your desk, put your director's cap on, and go to the board meeting.
Yeah, it's very, very difficult for executive directors to
Absolutely.
juggle those two. But it sounds to me from all of our discussions today, and I know we are coming to the end, but it's from everything you've said, we've gone from legal liability to and personal liability to integrated reporting to internal controls and integrated assurance and this is all about sustainability. So when we talk about sustainability from a board level and the long-term value creation, long-term sustainable value creation from a chair's perspective, it's, we're not talking about biodiversity and climate only. We're talking about the sustainability of the organization at so many different levels. So it feels to me like sustainability is, and as you say, it's your business model needs to change. This is not just another report. We shouldn't be talking about, from what you're saying, is I'm hearing, we shouldn't just be talking about, is this an ISSB standard, or is this an FRAG or a VSME standard, or actually this is about the way we do business is fundamentally shifting. Is that the conversation at the board level that a chair should be driving?
What the chair should drive is what is material. Material in the sense that it could influence the mind of the user of what you're reporting. And that if there's something material, but the standards you're following doesn't deal with that, that doesn't mean don't have to report it. If it's material in the sense that as a matter of probability, it could influence the mind of the user, but your standard you're following doesn't deal with that particular issue, well, you've still got to report on it. And if you don't, you commit a criminal offence and you've got could have civil responsibility. The company could sue you civilly. So
Just explain that.
you could, like the ISSB, perfectly within their rights to say their audience is the investor.
Mm.
So they say their standards are investor related and financially have got financial outcomes. But that doesn't mean if you follow those standards to the letter that you have fulfilled your obligations of disclosing material information in the sense of information which could influence the mind of the user as to whether to remain a creditor of the company or not, that you don't have to disclose that. You certainly have to disclose it, even though it's only got an environmental outcome at the moment, not a financial outcome. Eventually it will become financial, but at the moment it hasn't got, but you've still got to disclose it. And hence the ISSB introducing that question of interoperability, which you know is an IT word. It's really not a word dealing with the question of corporate standards. But it's now been introduced and everybody uses it as if it's part of the corporate world, that you have this interoperability, that you report on the ISSB standards, which have just got these financial outcomes. And interoperability, if you've got something else which is material, you've got to still report it. But what do? Do you follow the ESRS? Do you follow the European standards? Do you follow the GRI? Or do you just report it as you see fit? You can't find a standard that helps you. So it's very interesting that EFRAG, the working group for the EU, and the executive of the ISSB are talking about alignment. And please God, there is an alignment, because at the moment you've got out there, Carolyn, as you would know, compliance panic, especially not large companies or listed companies that can afford consultants like you, for example, uh, or PwC or Deloitte,
Deloitte.
whoever it is. Um, Most companies can't afford consultants to help them with these things, and there's compliance panic out there. Say, well, what is the standard we have to adopt? And the answer is we don't know what standard is actually going to be mandated in South Africa. As we all know, Section 203 of the Companies Act creates the Financial Reporting Standards Council, which has the power to say what standard of reporting financially we should adopt, which we've adopted the IASB standards, International Accounting Standards Board standard. But it's got no power, the Financial Reporting Standards Council, to tell any organization or limited liability company in South Africa to follow the ISSB standards or follow the EU standards or follow the SEC directives. They're not standards. They've got no power to do that. And that's why that needs to be amended through Parliament to give it the power to deal with sustainability issues. And then you will get the board made up not only of accountants, financial people, but people who are zoologists, hydrologists,
Yes.
whatever, ecological people. And so you have 5 of those people and 5 of the accountants, and those 10 people who have a different mindset now applying to what needs to be reported and what is in the long-term best interest of the health of South Africa from a longevity point of view. Which standards should we adopt? Well, maybe we should look at who is the biggest trading partner of South
Yes.
Africa.
Yes, so not just lawyers and accountants. We need economists and
Absolutely.
ecologists
I think you
and
need
climate scientists
I
and
think you need an economist there, yeah.
definitely. So actually what we're saying is that it really starts from the tone from the top, because what I see as common practice is that when materiality is discussed, it's generally discussed in the audit committee and the audit committee is only discussing it because it's a point on the external audit that says this is our level of materiality. And then the board just approves a recommendation from the audit committee in terms of materiality. That is all now on its head, because companies, well, certainly since the Brundtland Commission in 1987, companies really have to be consider the materiality of more than just financial, because we materially impacting the environment, and the environment climate is materially impacting us as an organization today.
Inside out and it's outside in on a company's enterprise value. How the company produces its product impacts on those 3 critical pillars for sustainable development, and those 3 critical pillars in turn are impacting on the company. And the example economically is the collapse of Lehman Brothers, impacted on the balance sheets of almost every organization in the world. Socially, the best example, of course, is COVID.
Yes.
And environmentally, climate change, bushfires. I mean, we see what's
Lots.
happening. So the Trump administration would say, forget about DEI, as they call it there. And but the facts are the facts. As I said when I was giving a talk at some conference a couple of weeks ago, that you can't get rid of those facts. So the SEC can say we should focus on the financial reporting. And you, Mr. IFRS, that was the chairman of the SEC, said in a speech recently, forget about these specious things you're focusing on, and just let's focus on financial standards of reporting. Well, is climate change a species thing? Is locking the doors of a factory to keep your workers
Yeah.
in? You have a fire, a species thing, the way you treat your workers. No, there's no
So,
doubt when you analyze it, profits have been subsidized by society and the environment.
and
And
it's our duty of care to then show those material factors.
correct.
Yeah. So thank you very much. I think the last word is, and I'll leave it to you in terms of summarizing, chairing for long-term sustainability. What would you say that is? I mean, you've given all the factors. What is the...
What I say is that you've got to have a long-term goal in place, and I've chaired boards where I've turned around companies, and so my colleagues and of the board, we've turned around companies, and you've got to keep that long-term goal in your eyesight. You know, it's got to be in the crosshairs of your rifle, and in between you're going to make short-term decisions, and from time to time you've got to alter them. You've got to change them.
Mm.
But don't lose sight of that long-term goal. So
Yeah,
there's a goal, and there must be a focus on the long-term health of the company, the long-term best interest of the health of the company. Because if you get that right, it's in the long-term best interest of all the stakeholders.
great. Thank you very much. And thank you very much to everybody online. We will be providing summaries, the recording, everything is on the same link that you use to register. That page will be updated. So you will always have access to this recording and the summaries and the explainer videos and the podcast style summaries. So please go and have a look at the registration page. And thank you for your questions. We will get to those as well. I will put a frequently asked question section on the page as well. So thank you so much, Prof King, again, for providing us with your deep insights. And we are looking forward to the next taking the helm.